is no Coach Lima. You probably don't think of him as a coach, you think of him as a fighter, but he is a coach now. In fact, he's the head coach of Charles Oliveira. Coach Lima. Coach Lima made a very interesting comment. And I have to tell you this before I'm going to do it. It's called Bury My Lead. I'll get to the comment in a second, but I must tell you, with Lima, who I've known for a meaningful amount of time, well over a decade, he has never said anything just to say it that I've ever heard. Ever. 0 times. If you can get to him and you can get a comment from him, which, by the way, is not easy. You're not guaranteed to get to him, and if you do, you're not guaranteed to get him to speak about something. You can just take it at face value. You can take it every time. Guess what he said? He said that Charles Oliveira turned down an immediate rematch with Islam Makhachev. That was none of his point. His point was not that his client was offered a fight at all. What his point was his next sentence. He said, for emotional stress. I fully get that. Charles Oliveira, right? I mean, he's been waiting to exhale. From the moment he got that championship, his life changes. Everybody wants his attention. He's been waiting to exhale. And when you get beat, there's a moment of that is not a full vindication on the relief, because that is being met with an equal and opposite reaction of stress about how I get it back. It's hard. It's a really hard moment. So when Coach Lima says that emotionally Charles needs a minute, I think that we all understand that. And I will tell you, if anything I have been impressed with in this entire Oliveira era, which might be over, is his mental toughness. I was willing to be a leading voice for you guys and for Charles, to the point that I was told by Douglas Crosby, stop, as it pertained to discussing the night that they stripped Charles. There is a massive story there, and there is a massive differing of opinions if that were to be tested, of which it was not. Not only was it not tested, nobody wanted to know. To the point that Douglas literally, hey man, stop. You sound weird going back to that. No one cares but you. All right. I'm sharing with you, though, it's a very relevant night to be in Charles's spot, to have that stripped. Your life just got very different. You think your life changes when you win that belt. You're right, but it's not just because of the fame. There's a lot of things that come along with that belt. There is a respect. There is an appreciation, for sure. There is an adoration, for sure. There is also a massive financial benefit. So it is a life change. It's a very sweet moment. It's the same thing when you lose it. Oh, by the way, I could only imagine when you lost it, but it wasn't in competition to another man. So Charles is going through that. Okay? Makes the walk against Justin Gaethje in Justin's home state. Put on the single best performance I've ever witnessed from him. So when I tell you that I am impressed with Charles' mental toughness, it's for very good reason. Now, when Coach Lima comes out and says, we were offered an immediate rematch, that was not the point. He was not trying to be salacious here. He wasn't even trying to be interesting. He was teeing something up to get to the point, which is leave Charles alone for a minute. Going to rest his body and we're going to rest his mind a little bit. Fully understand. But he sure did say something salacious, and he sure did say something interesting. Wait just a second. Are you telling us, the audience, that in spite of Volkanovski having a face-off, the world being told, taking this match to Perth, #1, pound for pound, versus the descendant of King Khabib himself, you're telling me in light of all of that, there was a phone call made that was willing to break that match up and do Charles versus Islam Part 2 instead? Big deal. It's a really big deal. You would come to why quickly. And we understand things whether we agree with them all the time or not. We understand them if it's best for business. We do understand them. When you have two really good options, where they're kind of the same. They're kind of the same in terms of the argument and the strength of an argument. But one is blockbuster businesses, one is not. We understand that. We don't even question it. Sometimes we point it out like we're the smart guy in the room. Oh, this is going to draw more, but we don't question it. That is very interesting to me. To have an organic moment in sport, particularly this one, is hard to do. It's hard to do. And we used to get them so infrequently that from a production standpoint, we would just force them. But now it's not organic. We would bring George St. Pierre into the ring to make a comment to Matt Hughes after Matt got a victory. We would bring Brock Lesnar in as we're shuffling Stipe out so that he can call Daniel Cormier a bowling ball. And now Brock's good enough and trained well enough. You can still make a moment. I'm just sharing with you. We got them so infrequently. We used to almost have to do them. This happened. I get that Volk was there. I get that we were told that he was going to be the alternative fighter. I get all of those things. Volk did not go get in the ring. Reed Harris did not escort Volk to the ring. That's not what you saw. Go back and watch it. Islam calls for him. Get him in here. Now you have an organic moment. It's just hard to run those back. It's hard to ever take something like that back. Such a massive fight. But if the information that we're being given is accurate, they were willing to take it back, and I would have to question why. There was nothing about Charles and Islam that was competitive enough to warrant possibly ever a rematch. I wouldn't want to take a dream away from Charles. Wouldn't want to do that in the least. There's many ways that Charles becomes world champion again. I don't know that even if he gets on a 3-fight win streak, he gets put back in there with Islam. There's nothing competitive about it. There's no controversy within it. There was no back and forth. There wasn't even a demand made. As a matter of fact, it sounds like the opposite of a demand. Hey, do you want the match? No. For whatever reason, but no. Okay, there's not a demand. I don't, it's a tough spot for me to accept, but I know Lima would not have said it unless Lima at least believed it was accurate. And what if Charles would have said yes? Where were they going to rematch him? Where were they going to put that fight? There's a card coming up in Brazil. Was that going to be the favorite that was going to be returned? And we're going to do this all based on the fact that Islam was said to have home court advantage? Islam is from Dagestan, training in San Jose, but there is a narrative that is still living on that he had home court advantage because they were in Abu Dhabi. All right. If so, what were we going to do with Volk? And I suppose that means Jair versus Josh Emmett is just up in smoke. I mean, do you see where there's a lot of moving parts here? Like, this is actually a very fascinating thing. Oliveira needs a minute. Oliveira needs the minute to build the strength, to find the motivation to get back into a world title fight. Oliveira's offered the world title fight. I mean, like in my world, all my problems just went away. In my world, use an example that we can all relate to at one point in our life. You're having a financial problem. You know that you never don't think about it. It's going all day. You're having a meal, but you're thinking about your financial problem. You're trying to get sleep at night, but you're thinking about your financial problem. You're in a car driving, but you're doing the math. How far am I going? What's the gas going to cost? I've already got financial problems. How am I going to pay for the gas when I get here? I mean, when you know when this happens, but what if somebody came in and hands you 10 grand? You would not now still have the financial problem and have the 10 grand. You would have the 10 grand and the financial problem would be gone. And so I'm just asking that about Charles' situation. If Charles is having an emotional stress about, oh my goodness, how am I going to get back in there? How am I going to get the opportunity? How am I going to get my life back? How am I going to get my title back? And then the phone call comes and offers him all of those things. It seems as though it wiped the slate clean. But that's a hell of an assumption by me. I'm not in his shoes. I had to go fight the best guys in the world, 5 of them in a row in a short time period, flying all over the world. Have my belt taken off me, trying to get it back. I mean, I don't question Charles. I'm just bringing to your attention that it is very interesting. If that information is accurate, and see, I got to use that word. I don't like when people say lie. I hear that all the time, but I watch a lot of political stuff. He's lying, he's lying. Before we get to he's lying, let's start with he's wrong. I mean, you have to start with that. If I tell you guys today's Saturday, but I think it is, for whatever I'm off, and you find out it's only Friday, I'm not a liar. Let's start with I'm wrong. And so in this sport, a lot of times when you hear varying opinions and varying information, let's not start with there's a liar. Let's start with he's repeating, regurgitating, or acting on information that he believed to be true. That information ended up being false. It doesn't make him false. It's a little bit different. I think that you guys see the difference. I believe Lima. I believe Coach Lima. That he believes Charles Oliveira was offered an immediate rematch. I do not believe that anybody was going to rewind that. Anybody wanted to see that match. Anybody thought that match was competitive enough to warrant a rematch. That there was a demand for that match to pull Volkanovski out and to pull that moment and rewind it all. I don't believe that. But I do believe that Coach Lima thinks it happened.